is ready to either A, shoot, or B, play a ball in. And based on the distance she is and where Kaylin is in goal right now, it is most likely she's not going to try to shoot out from there. It's not a high percentage shot, so she's more likely to try to play in one of these two players as a receiver of the pass. You take notice here that Kaylin is not flat on her line waiting for a shot. She's a little higher because she knows she can protect that area, but she could also maybe come out if she, say, needs to be preventative. As that ball comes through, you can see in this moment she's ready to come. She realizes, okay, she could shoot it here. I need to be set. So there's a moment of I'm coming out. Okay, I'm ready to get set. She now knows this runner's here because of the setup we were here first. She had two runners in that could be receiving of that pass. She knows that runner's there, but she has to get set and respect that this could be a shot. But as soon as it becomes a pass, she's turning her body and immediately taking off, which brings me to point number 1. So I'm going to give you 3 main points that I'm going to talk about throughout these clips. One is follow the principle. You want to prevent when you can, but react when you must. And we see that really well right here. So take it all the way back. If this happened to be a shot, she was ready to react if she must. She was ready to prevent based on a through ball, but then she saw that it could be a shot, so she was ready to react if she must. She saw her opportunity to come out and prevent, and she fully committed and took off into her spread, which ends up being an incredible save from 6 yards out on what looked like could be a wide open goal. Now, with that being said, I'm going to bring you to my second point, which I'll talk about throughout these clips, which is there are early cues you can read that tell you I can be a shot preventer. The early cue for me here is a through ball. No one has full control of this through ball. Can I come out? Nope, I can't. And I have defensive pressure, but that's a whole nother podcast. As soon as she says, okay, this ball's going to be between us, I don't have a lot of distance to cover. Those are early cues that I know kind of leading into this. And look at the body shape of the attacker and where the ball's going to land. Okay, an early cue for me is I can put enough pressure on this that she has to hit it on one time. And even if it doesn't hit directly off me, I'm going to force her into a high pressure finishing opportunity, which is a little bit more difficult to handle. Finally, I'm going to bring you to point number 3, which is can you get your weight in your front foot? Almost coupling with that is starting position. Can I start a little higher? Not so high that I'm giving something away in terms of shot stopping, but starting a little higher so that I almost deter an attacker from playing the through ball. Or if they do play the through ball, I'm ready to come out. And pairing that with being weight on my front foot helps me get into this running position that you're going to see right here. So she's here, weight in the front foot, ready to push off and be preventative. Because as we know, or as we've talked about in the past, when we talk about shot prevention, it's really important to push off from far enough away that you're not allowing the attacker to gain ground on that ball, or you're going to be able to use your push to drive into said ball. So that one's one of my favorite clips. I still have 2 more, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about those points that we have that could help you as well with your shot prevention. So this next one is still playing with her club, the San Diego Wave, and we can see the ball right here at half field. And again, it'd be very low percentage chance to score from here. So we can probably make an educated guess that this is going to be more of a big ball in behind. And the nice thing about a big ball in behind is we know, 1, from this position, we can go to point 3, which is starting position a little higher and weight in the front foot. We can do that because there's always time to retreat, but it also gives us more advantage if we did want to shot prevent and come forward. Another thing we know is that this is probably intended for runners. So knowing what those runners are and what their runs may look like and following the flight of the ball can help me decide what early cues are helpful. So this ball is played in the air. We do not see the goalkeeper until this moment. So we don't know her exact starting position or if her weight's in her front foot. However, by the moment we do see her and the ball's taking its first second bounce, we can tell she's halfway through the 18. So more likely than not, she chose to already come out as that ball was traveling. She looked for early cues of, okay, there's 1 runner. I have 3 defenders. There's 2 late runners. I'm going to come out because I think, principle number 1, I can impact this ball with a shot prevent. I'm going to let it play out. I think something that's important to note is she has the defensive pressure. She might feel more inclined to come out knowing that they can come in behind, but that's a side note. I think the biggest thing on this is principle number 1, which we just ended with, which is if I can shot prevent, I'm going to impact the ball when I can. I'm going to react when I must, rather than let the attacker gain control. Back in this moment, where this ball wasn't directly to her feet, it's not very comfortable to bring down on the bounce, rather than let her gain control and have to let her get comfortable and me be less comfortable by reacting would be difficult. So the fact that she saw these early cues of, okay, I can come out, the ball's going to slow down because as it hits the floor, it takes a little bit off it in this scenario. And I'm going to commit to putting that pressure on, letting my defenders drop in behind me and push off from far enough away that I can force pressure on her to have the shot earlier. And I think that's a big thing about looking for early cues. If I want to shot prevent, I have to be reading situations that allow me to do so. So a big ball in behind, a through ball. Sometimes it's a bad touch. Sometimes it's deflection. But I think looking for those early cues and looking for things like attacker's body shape. Do I have recovering defenders? Is there extra runners in the box? Those can help me make a decision, sometimes a little bit earlier than if I let the ball bounce and the attacker get control and I didn't start coming out until this moment here. I think that allows her to have more time and give me less of an advantage and let her have maybe that shot that she's more selecting versus here, because Kaylin's already putting pressure on. She's forced into hitting that at that moment rather than taking a couple extra touches and being comfortable. So that's why principle number 2 is one thing that I talk a lot about, in particular, like as goalkeepers are getting more comfortable with their shot prevention, I think it just gives them more freedom to explore, okay, when can I use this and when and where and in what situations is it most effective for me? So we're going to go to our final clip, our last clip of the day. This is only about 35 seconds of clips. And the last one is just, again, with the San Diego Wave. I think we can tell here, if you look at the attacker's body shape, she's most likely not shooting it. So again, like as a goalkeeper, you want to be looking for cues like that to tell you, okay, what's my starting position? Because I know I have 2 runners. This defender here is kind of like already running back. She's side on, and she's putting pressure on to kind of try to funnel and squeeze towards where she has her help. So as that happens, I know she's most likely not hitting this because of her body shape. And she's going to be playing it through. I'm looking to say, okay, she'll be isolated. What could I do to help me impact the ball? Because once more, that's our number 1 overarching principle. If I can impact the ball, I want to. I'm only going to react when I must. So the early cue is the through ball. We know Kaylin was not on her line just based on the fact that she's already here as this ball is being driven in towards the top of the 18. We see this running position. Now, I can't lie to you and tell you that I know if she was already in a runner's stance, but I can tell you that it would help in this moment if she was, just because we can't see your starting position. But if she started in a runner stance here, it just aids in this movement that she's starting to do to get towards the attacker. And you can see that this is about the moment she's ready to almost push off into that ball. And just like the last time, those early cues of knowing what the first person on the ball, aka, the assist player in this moment can do or is capable of. Can she shoot? Most likely not. So what's this going to be in this scenario? A through ball. I'm going to be weight on my front foot. I'm going to be a little higher off my line, because if she chooses to shoot it, I could still, set back and get balanced to react. If she chooses to drive forward, I'm going to take some space. I'm going to decide I can impact this ball and push off from far enough away and force her into a shot maybe she's not ready to have, or force her into a shot that goes right into me. Those are the 3 clips I have for you. And I think all of them there's some similarities, but all of them look a little bit different in how the play evolved or where the play evolved from. And I think that it's really important for us to have an idea of what we're looking for when we're in these scenarios. So I'm just going to take it back to
all intros.
There, that's still interesting.
All right, welcome back to Gloves Off. We have not one but two former All-Americans. We have the 2006 All-American, first team All-American, and the 1992 first team All-American here. Jill Loyden joined Saskia
Oh
and
my
I,
gosh.
and between the three of us, I think we have 38 national team caps. I think that's right. If I'm doing my math right, I'm at 0, so I'm there, and then y'all make up the rest. But Jill,
which puts us on the list because
Yeah.
as goalkeepers, which like
Yeah.
you floored me last time we did that, and he was quizzing me on the caps, and I was like, I didn't say my name, and he's like, are you gonna say your name? And I'm like, well, I'm really not sure where I fall in that. And he's like, I think it was like 6th or something, and I'm like, what? I'm like, that should tell you something. I was there for 10 years. I was like, can we go by how many games I was rostered for?
Right? That's what I'm saying.
Because then I'd have like the century thing and the whole 9 yards.
Good. Jill, thank you for joining us. For those that haven't crossed over with Jill online, actually, if you're watching this, you probably have seen Jill somewhere. Jill, I feel like every time I'm going online, there's something from TKI coming out, and I really enjoyed it. And tell me a little bit as far as what your mindset has been. But it seems like over the last year or so, you've really put a lot of effort and time into not only being educational, but also doing it from a lens of tangibility for not only the youth, but also understanding the highest of the highs. So yeah, am I off base? It seems like this last year or two, like you've really put a lot of effort into being a little bit more educational and putting stuff out for the public.
Yeah, I think I have an impatience with our country when it comes to goalkeeper coaching, because I just think there are so many people who want to be great coaches and really want to help the next generation of young players step up and succeed at this, as the game is evolving. And I just feel like there's nothing for people out there. And so we just really took initiative to be like, you know what, we're doing something different. We are kind of the disruptors in our industry, and like, let's share more about what we think. And even if someone comes at us to challenge us, like, that's going to eventually make us better too, like having those internal conversations to so it doesn't become an echo chamber at TKI sometimes. But yeah, I mean, I think we really care about the 8-year-olds who's just starting the position, and we want to keep them safe, and we want to encourage them and embolden their passion for the position so they stay in it for a long time. But also, I think we understand the game really well to the smallest minute detail of like tac at the highest level in the world. And so for everybody in between, I feel like we try to help educate and support.
Yeah, we've talked about this, Bill, how stagnant the upcoming goalkeeper community had become, even on the men's side as well. And to list off top goalkeepers, that you used to be able to list off top goalkeepers from the US around the world, in a sense, on both sides. And I think that's waned. And it's because of the kind of the educational side of it got stagnant as well. And what is put into it was not existent. And like UTKI and the union, we had to take it on ourselves because it wasn't going to be done for us. And the days of the Tim Howards, Tony Miolas, Bry's and you and me and everything, I think people just got used to the fact that, hey, we have some really talented goalkeepers,
Well, the position,
you have to develop it.
Yeah. Well, the position has evolved so much. And I think we got away with it because we had really incredible athletes in our country. Like even Bry and Hope, like they were incredible athletes. But the position has evolved probably the most of any position in the last 10 years. You have to become more well-rounded than just a shot stopper. You've got to be preventative in all phases of the game. You have to be able to retain possession, play high-value passes, communicate, which really falls back onto game understanding. So then it really becomes a question of, well, what are we developing in our country?
Right.
Because we've had these athletes who are great shot stoppers, but if we haven't evolved with it as coaches, then we're just falling way behind, if we're not changing and staying up with the evolution of the position. Because right now, I think in my mind, coaches, I hear consistently complain about 3 things when it comes to goalkeepers. One is they don't understand the game. But as coaches, if we haven't evolved to help paint those pictures and allow them to tactically understand what's happening, it's on us, right? 2, they're not good in possession. Well, you know why they're not good in possession? Because as coaches, we don't foster
Yeah.
environments where they can solve pressure and manipulate the opponent, because we pass to, a mini goal that has no detail on it. There's no defender in the picture,
Nobody
right?
pressuring you, nothing.
Right. And then they also complain about goalkeepers just not being confident, right? So then it goes back to, well, what does our training environment look like? Are they 10 out of 10 all the time in their training environment? Of course they're going to be. When they go in a game, it doesn't look like that. They're not going to be confident. So, all the problems I think that we have with the lack of well-rounded goalkeepers in our country, it really does fall back on us as coaches to be more progressive and understand how can we foster those environments that then translate to the game.
It's interesting because I was sitting here thinking, like, the way goalkeeping used to be, I mean, love, I'll take Bri as an example. I mean, didn't take her own goal kicks. I know, and that's baffling to people right now, but there was no playing inside the 18 back then and everything like that, if you don't remember. But, if you're young and don't know that, but didn't take her own goal kicks. I mean, there were times that my knee was killing me. I didn't take my own goal kicks. So I'll throw myself under the bus. But there was no building out of back. You weren't that 11th player. You were a shot stopper. You were there to take care of breakdowns, crosses, this and that and the other. And there was no like, okay, how do I break pressure? How do I break lines? How am I the first pass on attack? And that wasn't a concept back then. And if you took goalkeepers from back then and plugged them into the game now, they would struggle with that. Big time. And it was big time. Listen, if you took goalkeepers now and stuck them into what we dealt with, they'd probably struggle there too on certain sides of the game as well. But I think they would, I know I would struggle. Well, I coach and now I know I can pass a ball pretty well and I have a great shot sometimes. But I think that, there was such a difference, and I agree with you. We didn't evolve as coaches either. We just said, well, we have great goalkeepers, they're fine. Mm-hmm. So it would be interesting. It'd be interesting to see certain players with that high press environment now across the board and being forced to play out of the back and bypass lines and really create what players from the past would really struggle with that.
I mean, we saw the change, the transition, the change of guard, like, even 80 French was in with the national team. And then we had this like more, it was like evolving right in the middle of her, highest like peak performances. And she tried to evolve with it, didn't have the tools and the capacities. And then she got left behind. Yeah. And there's other goalkeepers like that. And that's no shade to her because she was a phenomenal goalkeeper, shot stopper in her error, but the error was changing right in front of her. And she wasn't equipped to evolve with it.
Oh, I bypassed lines on a throw.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm serious. Like that was it. I could like one hop it to midfield. I can't anymore. I can't throw it all. You should see me trying to throw the ball with the dog earlier. But it was just a different time. Yes, and there actually, I'm surprised that there are actually some goalkeepers in my notes on goalkeepers, even in the NWSL right now, that I'm a little shocked on their inability to build out of the back. And we will name a few, but it's like, this has got to get better.
Yeah. Well, I love just getting out of the way and hearing y'all talk, first of all. So but a lot of my questions, and this, I think where it circles back to TKI for me is, I kind of wonder sometimes if it's an inability to do it or if it's a lack of investment into a goalkeeper. Because I'm sure both of y'all, any goalkeeper can remember that light bulb moment that they had, like, oh man, a coach, finally explained this, or I understood it, where, Jill, all those things you just named, those are big ideas, those are big constructs. But if you don't have those finer details out, playing out of the back, that's a lot of moving pieces there. So we'll dive into it a little bit. Even with the national team, I think we can say a lot about these goals and the She Believes Cup. But that's the thing I'm always wondering. It's like, okay, could they not do it, or did they not even get a chance? And now,
well, really quick on that, for me, when I coach club, I found it was an inability to coach it. Not on my end, but I only had, for club, I only had the goalkeepers for a certain amount of time. And then when they're with their teams, I would look over and they're with their teams and they're not doing anything and they're not involved in the building out of the back. They're not involved in the play. And then your coach comes to me and says, why can't they do this? I'm like, because you're not training them in. Like, they have to be trained into game scenarios and game situations. You have to allow them to fail. And they don't do that.
Yeah. There's certainly a certain level of failure that you need. And I will say, I think She Believes Cup was a good time to see both of our goalkeepers within Mandy Hott and Jean Campbell really getting tested here. So we're going to start off with the Australia game. We won this game 2-1. I think at this point in the game, we kind of, from my perspective, felt like it was in the bag, and things just got a little loose in the final 10 minutes. Needlessly got a little stressful here. But Jill, you just mentioned a lot of things as far as taking responsibility. I feel like this play is that for me. I've got things I feel like I'm seeing, but y'all start me off first. What are like the main things y'all see with this as far as taking responsibility in these moments? It's not just a shot stopping moment, but what are other moments here that a goalkeeper needs to be thinking about?
Well, first of all, what's up with the defense? I gotta throw the defense under the bus right here. But go ahead, Jill. I know I don't mind her positioning in this, but if you are going to have that positioning and that, then it's a tough ball to come for. It's at the top of the 6. It's bending away and everything, but she's not set. She's on her heels and she's backing up when the ball's headed down. Yeah. So I would have probably come. I think I would have anticipated more. And I think to get a jump forward and come box through that ball and everything, make a play on it. But to back up with your momentum going backwards and being straight up and on your heels, it's almost like I don't know what to do here moment for me.
I actually really like her positioning because it's not a high probability of a shot to occur. And even if it was, even if this attacker could shoot, Mandy would have enough time to be able to cover that near post because the ball's in like the wider channel of the wide channel. So like typically at TKI, we break that wide channel down the middle and she's in the furthest wide channel. So you have more time to react to the ball that gets played into a central position. So I actually like her positioning.
Yeah.
Our principle is to position where you can impact multiple outcomes. Mm-hmm. Right now, there's only one runner in the box. So it's either going to be a shot or a play to that one person that's in between those two defenders, right? So I actually think that's really good. Once the ball gets played, I think she just takes a little bit too long to make the decision to back set.
Yeah.
And then once she does back set, she has to get set as she's moving backwards right there. If you go back to that one clip where her feet finally get back and underneath of her, if she does that a half second sooner, I think she saves this, or she gives herself the best possible opportunity to save it. I also think as she comes across the ball served in the air, so we can set with our hands just a bit higher because we know it's either going to be a ball that's headed in the air or come back off the ground, at which point we need to be able to dig it out.
Yeah. Saskia, you mentioned about this might be a ball you come to. I think this is one of those things that really.
But if you don't, and I agree with Jill, if you don't, the decision, the hiccup is there. You can't take that ball. Right. It has to be a quicker reaction and 100% on Jill's thing, and she has to be set sooner. And I agree with you. I think she does make the save.
Well, and I think for Hott's game, like coming out for this ball probably doesn't match it. I think for a keeper who's pretty quick with her feet, I don't think that's really Hott's game as far as like the quickness. Like she's very methodical what she wants to do. She's very detail oriented. But I think this is one of those things where it is a difficult task to back set, like you're saying, Jill, and get all that timing right. Because if you miss it at all, she's off by what, 0.2 of a second? It's not much.
Right. Right.
This is really going to pop her. So I think this one of the things, like if you play this, you see this in the 90s, like keepers are coming out for that 9 times out of 10. You see that now. You see a lot of goalkeepers are so quick to set in. And for her with Hott, I think it makes sense for her game. But I do feel like there's sometimes keepers could go get this, but they're so quick to like, cross, I'm not going to go get it. I'm just going to sit in. So I think it's
two things. Yeah, I agree with your point. I think there's two things to consider here. One is like, what are the skill sets and attributes of the goalkeeper? Mandy McGlynn is like, her shot stopping is way better than her goal area defense, right? Like her ability to step back and react is way better than goal area. But also back what you're saying is like in the 90s, like someone will come for that because the detail and the nuance of the service was completely different. And like,
that's a good point.
We remember when we were in goal and the ball would literally come down with snow on it because attackers were just lumping it. Yeah, like lumping it in like this. So we had time to get out. Well, now, the services are so quick and they're bending away into the runner. This is a perfectly placed assist into the goal area. It's not too high. It's bending away from Mandy. I mean,
Yeah, the pace on the
personally,
ball. The pace on the ball is what, and I was going to say that after, the pace on the ball is what holds her here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really good service, period.
It's a great service.
Yeah. Yeah, the pace and the height. It's a great service. So nothing against Australia. They're getting enough grief right now anyway. So I mean, like, let's give Australia a little love there. You're muted, Bill.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. No, it was a very good play there. We scrape out with a 2-1 win there. Like I said, kind of needlessly stressful, but we slipped out there. But I think we all kind of knew going into the final game, the Japan game was going to be the biggest one. A lot to say on this opening goal here. I think it's frustrating is probably the word I would go to. I think Campbell, I couldn't quite get the angle, but she actually gets ran into twice on this play. So very difficult play here with a lot of moving pieces. Again, the tactical advancement of thinking of all these things. I think this is a really tough play of how do we play this, because again, thinking of skill set, thinking of what we want to do. You play this with 10 different keepers. I think we see 10 different answers off this. But Saskia, what stands out for you on this one?
I think my issue on this one is why go down into a spread save? Why here? Because number one, the ball, the Japanese player is going away, right? So now you've kind of gotten yourself into a bit of a debacle with Sonnet and her. Like, if you hold, in my opinion, on this, you can come close space, but if you hold on this, odds are Sonnet's going to force her out wide. Right. And even if she doesn't, then you're there for the touch around to come, and now you can play. But I think getting involved in this scenario right here is the mistake. Like, there's no reason for it. The ball is going away from goal. The player is going away from goal. And I think and whether it's miscommunication, whatever, but I think I would have held there, and I don't know why go down, because I don't see the quick shot to the near post here, if that's what she was worried about. And her momentum brings her into the players. I think she puts herself into a dire situation that doesn't need to happen here. Thoughts, Jill?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the principle for me is if you can impact the ball, go. And she can't impact the ball. The attacker is not threatening to goal. She's making an in to out run. So her run is actually taking her further away from goal, which means it's less threatening. There's some pressure on the ball. So she's in an acute angle. And what's Jane Campbell really good at? Shot stopping. Right? So give yourself an opportunity to get set. It takes bravery. You got to be in the right set position, in the right shape. But 9 times out of 10, I think from that position, that angle, Sonnet's going to get pressure on the ball. And even if the attacker can get a shot off, Jane Campbell's in a really good position, great angle. The goal looks miniature with a player like Campbell in it. So I think I think this ties into probably our next topic that we want to talk about is the anxiety. And this play happens 90 seconds into the game, where everyone knows it's a massive game. Everyone knows Japan's done really well, and she believes in the first 2 games. There is this added pressure to the goalkeepers to make your first play, get settled into the game and influence the game and make a stamp, because hey, the number 1 jersey's up for grabs, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you do not curb those emotions or recognize them, and you make decisions based on emotions over logic, you put yourself in a really tough place.
And I think 9 times out of 10, Campbell doesn't react this way to this, and let's say, and I agree with you, even if Sonnet, let's say she stays big, she doesn't come out, she doesn't commit here and take Sonnet out. If Sonnet gets beat, again, agreed, she's a great shot stopper. She's there, she's in a great position. It's like, hey, try to beat me. And you're not going to, and you have the rest of the team recovering. So I think, yes, the anxiety, and we'll get into that, played into this. It's that emotion. I want to put my stamp on the game and everything, but also unfamiliarity. I know you've been training together, but you haven't played that much together. I
have one more point.
Yes.
And this goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning of this podcast. But how many times do you think in training, in her goalkeeper environment, that she does training with a defender like this? Because without a defender, I'm like, okay, maybe I can see why you would do that. But with the defender, it completely changes the complexion of your decision. And so that's why I believe it's important that, like, within your training environment as the coach, that you not just work on the final action, right? Like, come out and spread, not just work on the final action, that you work on the process of getting to the final action. So in this circumstance, the defender is there to apply pressure. And so that would completely change your decision if she wasn't there. So, my challenge to us as coaches is, can we paint that picture more often than just having an attacker by themselves, taking their grand old time to get to goal, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I would even zoom out even one more step, because I think it's a great question because I think this frame here shows Campbell, at least in my opinion, that Campbell expects Sonnet to pinch as opposed to swing under, and that's why she gets bulldozed on the play. So I can see where Campbell might be thinking, oh, hey, if we collectively pinch here, like, we'll have this. But there's a lot of moments you're not gonna be able to train for. Like, you're absolutely right of, hey, can we look at this? Can we look at that? But what is the process of thinking, okay, this is a moment that we haven't been able to train for. We've given up a quick throw in. It's in on goal. It's kind of an awkward run away from goal, but there's still a defender in. Like, it's very difficult to get all those pieces in training. Very unlikely. But is the process, hey, I'm just going to go throw my body, or is a process, hey, I know these are things that I'm good at. These are things I'm not so good at. I'm going to lean to my strengths and kind of hide my weaknesses. It's a lot of questions, but I think, again, like, the training environment is like the big question for me. I mean, how many times do you even work on breakaways where the ball's going away from goal?
Right, but I think the key is that I think that's the miscue here, is reading the situation. I don't think the understanding of the fact of where the runner's coming from, where the ball is going, I think that was all miscued here. Like, yes. And even, let's take Sonnet out of it. Even if this pass comes in, that first touch is away from you. You still don't go, unless she's going and she's making a play on the ball, like Jill said, you would hold yourself. Like, what are you going to do? You're taking a touch away from me. Now, let's say there's no defenders, because that's how a lot of practice happens. And then she's going to turn and this and that and the other and so on and so forth and take 10 touches. And it's not, but still in the moment, it's still not the right play.
But to your point, Bill, goalkeepers, I think these days, in my opinion, or let me ask you guys this. How would you describe the best goalkeepers in the world with 1 to 3 adjectives? You get 3 words to describe the best goalkeepers in the world. What would you say?
Oh, gosh.
Off the top of my head, I think the first 2 that come up, there is a baseline of athleticism, but there's also, I'm trying to think the right word for it, but some sort of, like, depth of understanding. I mean, IQ is maybe the easiest phrase, but
that's where
some sort of practical knowledge of, like, hey, I can handle situations I haven't trained for. Those are probably the first 2 words that come up for me.
Right. Yeah, like, mine's the same. Yeah. It'd be game understanding, like tactical knowledge. Yes, athleticism, those things are great, but it really is key of reading the game for me.
Yeah. For me, I would just say, I think the best goalkeepers in the world are well-rounded, adaptable problem solvers, right? And so, like, no technique is in there, right? Like, just adaptable problem solvers. And to me, and you're right, Bill, we're not going to paint this exact picture in training, but you know what we could paint is a bunch of different scenarios with principle guided questions. So the principles are there. So, no matter what situation pops up, the principle, if I can impact the ball, I can go.
Right.
If I can't, then I step back and I react. The principles are there. And so then you can feel comfortable, and there's freedom, and there's this space that you can be adaptable, and you can solve the problem based on your skill set, based on the principles of play, right? So yes, to your point, we're not going to see this exact scenario, but also to Saskia's point is, like, yeah, we could see an attacker in our training session make a run from a central position to a less threatening area, take their touch away from pressure, and we could maybe impact the ball. We could go, but if we can't, we know that it's not threatening, so we would just step back and react, right? So it allows, if our training environment allows goalkeepers to be more adaptable in these situations, and to make the choices consistently right more times than not.
Yeah.
I like to think that Jill has just binders of, like, goalkeeping.
Oh,
like flipping through, like, you rattled that off so quickly. I was like, man, she's
the best. Are you kidding me?
Wonderful.
I, like, sit here and just take notes. Like afterwards, send me the recording right away.
Well, thinking of how did you principles of play? What was the phrase you used? Excuse me, I'm already blanked off of it. What'd you say, Jill? The principles.
If you can, if you can impact the ball, then you can then go. If you can't, then you would stay back and react or be ready to make another decision.
There was a phrase. I'm sorry. What was the phrase you used? So there was
The three things.
Oh, my 3 things about well-rounded, adaptable, effective problem solvers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you
Okay,
go.
So here's like I think a good example of.
I need a T-shirt.
Yeah. We need it. So the U.S. levels the score. We're in the second half here, and I think there's a lot of little details that go a long ways off this play. Obviously, there's some positive here. I think that the footwork's probably the big one for me. She doesn't just instantly move or sell out her body. It's a lot of good, quick footwork here. But Jill, what are some like the finer details that you feel like might have made Campbell's life a little easier off this play?
Yeah, I mean, initially, I love her positioning, the depth that she retains, just because it gives her less area to protect over her head, and also more time if there is a slight deflection, whether it comes off the wall or she's unsighted and can't really see it. So she gives herself a bit more time to be able to react. Her movement toward the ball, I think, is fantastic. The way she gets her shoulder over knee, she leans in there, she keeps her feet underneath of her. I just think, though, that you have to expect that your box is going to be crowded. And so the further away you can get your rebound, the better. And I think that when she decides to go with 2 hands, there isn't a ton of pace on the ball. It almost kills the pace of the ball. And so she isn't able to get a rebound far enough away from goal. Initially, it's a great attempt. But if she splits to 1, I think she can push that rebound further away.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, and it makes me think of the goal against Anna Morehouse in the Challenge Cup, right?
Mm.
She's not in good position, right? She is off her line a little bit too much, right? And so this ball's put in the same spot, and she can't get there. And I think it's because she's a little bit too far forward. I don't think her positioning was good, and she gets there, but she doesn't really get there. And I think she had more depth in her positioning, she would have been able to get there possibly for it. I don't know if Jane Campbell is trying to parry this ball, and I think that's my issue here. And I think I said that I think she's trying to hold this ball, and this is everybody knows Mike makes fun of me. Everybody makes fun of me. I'm like, catch the ball. Goalkeepers catch the ball, no rebounds. This is a case where this has to be parried. This has to be cleared. Yes, 1 hand. Whether you're going 2 hands, you got to go shoot from your chest and go at force. And the reason I don't think she's trying, because her hands are already there when the ball hits, and I think she's trying to catch it. And I think that is a mistake here. But because
is that kind of the like allurement of Campbell, of how I feel like her game is so built on, hey, I'm going to go show you like why I'm here.
Well, we get into the question of, what are you trying to prove something here? Like, are you trying to say, hey, I'm going to stick this ball. I'm going to go to the upper 90. I'm going to stick this ball. I'm going to catch it. I just felt when I saw this, and I've seen it over and over again, I said, and I'd love to ask her, were you trying to hold on to the ball?
Surely.
No fault of your own. And I'd say, not like in practice, please make that attempt, extend your range, see what you can hold on to and can't hold on to. But like you said, Jill, with your box crowded and everything like that, if you don't hang on to this ball, you're going to have a problem. And so this ball, in my opinion, there is no question of it, has to be cleared out.
Mm. I think this goes back to our training design again. I know. I honestly, you guys, I always want to bear the brunt of problems when we see goalkeepers, and it comes back to us, right? Like, our job is to help them succeed. So I always think, like, what can we do to set them up for more success, right? So if we're never training with pressure that's coming on to you, and we're told to catch everything, like a lot of goalkeepers are these days now, then you're taking away our decision to make an effective solution. And the effective solution here would be to put this rebound out as far away from goal as possible.
Yeah, and it's a good question. You wonder, like, let's say in practice, in training camp, was she showing up against free kicks, and was she holding on to this shot? Not
even that. Not even in that. Like, I'm talking about from grassroots when we start with young goalkeepers, like I'm talking about, I asked someone the other day, like, they were like, well, what about catching for 8-year-olds? I said, catching for 8-year-olds, their hands are shrimp forks. They can't catch anything anyway.
Shrimp forks. It's that SNL thing.
Yes, exactly.
But you're right, exactly, and the ball's too big for them and everything. So teach them good decision making and
teach them game understanding.
And that goes back to your argument about what coaches say is that they goalkeepers don't have game understanding. Well, what environment are you putting them in? When I was at UCLA, the one thing, hats off to Amanda and Sam and them, is everything we did was like, there was technical training. But then everything had like this game environment to it. And, when we were doing attacking scenarios or anything, there was always defense with us. There was always a certain, it was never that. There were times I'd have to yell at, Sunshine Fontes for taking 20 touches in the box and then chipping the keeper. And I'd look at my keeper, I'd be like, don't worry about it. Like that. But other than that, like you have to put goalkeepers into that scenario in training. 100%.
Well, and I think, when you ask about the environment, what they're put in, the idea of handling isn't an either or option. Like this is actually a great example of like handling can include like pairing, and even with the 8-year-olds, like it's not necessarily like a W or diamond shape. Like they can still control the ball without like catching it behind. Like there's a lot of ways you can handle the ball. I think a lot of coaches think of it exclusively as like, I'm going to hit a volley at you and you're going to catch it like this. Oh, actually turn your hands exactly like this. Like,
well, there's also a controlled catch where you can knock it down if it's all over the place. I mean, Tony used to teach us that all the time, especially if Michelle was kicking a ball. So like,
yeah. No, I think we talked about the adaptability. For me, I mean, if she had held this save, I mean, that's like a top save. Like it would have been all over Sports Center, would have been awesome. But I feel like this moment of like, I'm not really sure what shape to take. Again, this is tough to train. I don't think it's impossible because you do definitely have those rebounds in training, whatever you're working on. But it's such a awkward shape of like, for me, it says like, I'm not quite sure what to do here because she's like kind of on one, and understandably, it's a tough shape to break out of because she's on the ground trying to get up for it. But I think she ends up getting megged on the play, which can happen. But I think that I was more disappointed by the final.
That's a quick. I think that's quick. I think for me, I think whether she surprised herself, I think she covered so much ground with her footwork, and I do want to give hats off to that. I love their positioning. I love the depth. I love the footwork to the point that she didn't have to totally lay out for this. She's not parallel. She's not like, getting like that last ditch effort, which might have actually saved the ball and been a better save, to be honest with you, because she got so under the ball that she did try to hold it. And I'm like, maybe that one hand tip was actually would have been the better result. So
yeah, fair. Well, I think this actually gives us a perfect transition. So I wanted to pull up these tweets from Jill, and I'll read them through in case we're having trouble seeing this here. I wanted to make sure we could find them all into one. But Jill, you talked about this earlier, but to just kind of quickly run through, there's an element. This is from Jill's tweet, not me. There's an element of being a national team goalkeeper that most will never understand, which far exceeds any amount of technique, skill, or competencies. Whether you take the field in a World Cup final or a friendly match on home soil, there's an absurd amount of inherent pressure anytime you slide that USA crest over your head. You go on here, Jill, but real quick, kind of lay in a little bit more here. I mean, a spoiler alert, again, I didn't play for the national team, so this is the sort of stuff that you're putting out with TKI in your own account, where I love gobbling this up because this is really good information. But lay in a little bit more of that pressure, like how does that impact a goalkeeper, not only in the decision making, but also within a team environment, whether that's in game or in training or off the field. And Saskia, follow up here in a second. But Jill, why don't you start for us? How does that pressure really showcase itself on the back end?
Well, I think everybody listening to this podcast can identify a time in their life when they felt pressure. And pressure isn't inherently good or bad. It's just how we react to it, right? So think about some different scenarios in your life where you feel pressure. You start to sweat maybe. you flight or freeze. Maybe you get, your belly starts to hurt. You start to worry, you catastrophize, whatever it might be, right? But we have all experienced pressure in our life. There's times where we cracked under that pressure, and there's times where we thrive under that pressure. And there is just an insane amount of pressure that when you're an American goalkeeper at any level, whether it's 14 all the way to the senior women's team, that you are playing in the shadows of the best that have ever done it. Kids nowadays know who Brian Escurri is that weren't even born when they won the 99 World Cup, right? People still say that Hope Solo is their favorite goalkeeper. They've never seen her play live, right? There's just this insane amount of pressure, not only because, they're the best that have ever done it, but also our women's team is probably the most successful team ever. Like, especially in women's sports ever. Like, they've won all these trophies and these World Cups and whatever. They're one of the best teams ever. So there's just this insane amount of pressure. We don't have a clear-cut number one. We haven't given anyone experience. And so no matter what these younger goalkeepers have played, Casey probably has 20 caps, but still, Mandy, that was like her second or third game. Jane, I think it was like her 10th or something, right? So they don't really have equity with dealing with that pressure. No matter how many Youth World Cups they played in, no matter how many NWSL finals they played in, nothing compares to even a friendly game against a team that's not very good. The amount of pressure that you walk onto that field with. And in goalkeeping, you have a lot of time to think. And so you're back there, you're thinking about, okay, well, there's a lot of pressure and I want to perform. Number one jerseys up for grabs. And millions of people are watching this game. Julie Foudy might say something bad about me if I make a mistake or whatever. And some people just need more time to be able to become familiar with that pressure. Like, think back when you guys maybe had your first job and your boss was there watching over your shoulder. You were like, oh crap, like my boss is watching. And then over time, when your boss, you would be like, hey, come watch
like
me.
Me with
come watch me.
Yes.
Yeah, but you become familiar with it. You're like, hey, come watch me work. And it becomes, not as scary anymore. But we need to give them some grace and understanding of they need to have time to familiarize themselves with this pressure and be able to cope with it over time. And eventually, we need to stop being so critical about these things that, we just talked about and being like, well, there's no Alyssa Nair, there's no Hope Solo, whatever. They could even be better than those players if we give them time to mature and to cope with this pressure. Because I think there are some mistakes that you see that are pressure mistakes, and then there's other mistakes that you see that are like game understanding mistakes, right? And they're quite different. And to us, we probably can identify them. Like, maybe the Jane Campbell thing is a little bit more anxiety than it is game understanding, right? But yeah, I think we need to be patient with the goalkeepers. Because we also have to recognize the biggest problem that we said off the top is that, we don't have a lot of coaches that are developing goalkeepers these days to understand the game, be confident in possession, make decisions in alignment with their skill sets and their capabilities. So it's going to be a process, and it's going to be a long-term thing that we have to really be hyper vigilant about.
Yeah, it's that expectation of instant gratification. Like, you expect there is a lot of anxiety all the time. And it was I used to make a joke that says, like, one of the worst things playing for the US national team was having no saves and 1 goal against. And trust me, it happened. Like, you didn't do anything all game, and then somebody takes just a worldie up into the, just in the upper 90, and there's nothing you could do about it. But I had no saves and 1 goal against. And you feel like you're always on the chopping block with the U.S. national team. And you do. And part of that came from just focusing on one goalkeeper, and not getting played in. And that's why we were making the jokes in the beginning about how many caps do you have? I was on the team for 10 years. I was rostered for over 100 games. But, I'm to be 6th on that list is crazy to me. And the one hats off to Emma Hayes, who's actually saying, I'm going to play some goalkeepers. I'm going to see what they can do. This thing has to change because you can't turn around and have an Alyssa Nair retire, or have a Hope Solo retire, or have somebody else retire and say, well, you have 200 caps and the next person up has 6. and then get upset with them and try to find the next new thing because you haven't given them the time to develop. You don't put a goalkeeper in for 10 minutes at the end of the game or for 15 minutes or at the 60-minute mark and say, let's get this youngster some time. Like, nobody does that. It doesn't work in that position. So the expectation of always being on as a U.S. national team goalkeeper and not making mistakes and always being your best is a heavy burden to that weighs on you. And trust me, I cried many times from the stress of it, many a times. And sometimes, like, my anxiety. I right now just thinking about game against Norway towards the end of my career on ESPN, and just got buried into the upper 90. And 9 times out of 10, I could have had that shot, but for some reason I didn't have it that day. And I don't think I ever stepped foot back on the field for the U.S. national team. And that was 10 years after being on the national team. I'm like, seriously, like, and it was a friendly, like. But it was like, well, we're going to try to find the next up and comer. And there's always that stress. There's always that stress in that position. And I don't think field players understand that. They get time to develop. They get games to develop. They get minutes to develop. And that has to change. And I think Emma Hayes gets that as well, because now she does have to find a new number one. She does. And it is not cut and dry. And we all have opinions on that. And it right now, for me, that jersey is 100% up in the air.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap up on this question, because you had a really intriguing thought. And if we get too lost in the woods, we can call it. But I am curious, when we talk about the social or the pressure of how the social side plays out. And you mentioned the anxiety, Saskia. You mentioned how the field players don't totally understand. I'm curious from y'all's example, or you can think of an example of your time, or you can relate it to something else. But how does the pressure of putting on that jersey affect off field, or how does it affect even on field, but collaborative work? How does that showcase itself? How does that anxiety come up? Did y'all have positive experiences with that? Were there negative experience? Like, how does the social side get impacted from the stress of being a goalkeeper for the national team?
Well, I mean, I think I understand your question. I mean, there was never more pride in my life than wearing that crest and that jersey and representing the United States and standing there for the national anthem and having that sisterhood and being part of the sorority. Like, it's, my greatest accomplishment. And that translates to off the field as well. Personally, like how you carry yourself, like your training environment, like, my training environment, I sought out every possible way to become the best athlete, the best goalkeeper, the best teammate, the best everything I could possibly be. It wasn't like, all right, I got practice at like Wednesday, Friday, whatever. It was every day, finding something 6 hours a day. And part of that is because you're representing the United States. You don't want to lose that. And there's a pride that goes with that. That's just, it's hard to explain personally. Still proud. So always will be.
Yeah. I mean, I think the 5 or however many years I was on the national team were the hardest of my career. The hardest, by far the hardest. Walking in every day, comparing myself to someone who is always going to be better than me. Like, no matter what I did, Hope was always going to be better than me. And, that's a credit to the athlete and the goalkeeper that she was. But for me, I just never was able to cope with that mental pressure. I was never able to step on the field and be free. I always internalized that pressure of like, I'm going to be cut any day. I'm on the bubble. I'm not going to make the World Cup roster. Not going to the Olympics. And catastrophized every single mistake I made in training and games. It was the most mentally fatiguing time of my life. And I didn't recognize that I could have had support for that until after I was done playing. And I didn't even recognize like that was like something I could control. And so I would be like a goalkeeper, playing behind Christy Rampone, who is one of the fastest in the world and playing a high line. And I would be making crazy, irrational decisions behind the back line where I would like come out and then I would stop and then I would try to retreat and I would just get stuck because I was so indecisive, because I was letting emotions rule my decisions instead of logic and information based on the game, right? But I'm so, so thankful for those 5 years or whatever of my life there, because it taught me about character. And to me, at TKI, you know, our mission statement is to help create great goalkeepers, but even better people.
Yeah.
And the better people means resilient, gritty, determined. And that's the way we train. Like, we don't want goalkeepers to be 10 out of 10 in our training. We want them to be 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, whatever. We want them to understand the resilience part of it, of like, it's okay to explore and make a mistake. And you are brave and you are mentally strong enough to recover from that. Right? Because that's real life. That's realistic to what we're going to experience in a game, because nobody's perfect and we need opportunities to be able to work on that. And so for me, if I think, all right, if I can instill in young goalkeepers the mentality of, I don't know, insert any good character trait. Let's just say gratefulness, right? If I'm grateful to my parents that they brought me to training today and afforded me this opportunity, what am I going to do? Yeah, I'm going to tell them, but I'm going to show them that I'm going to work hard in training, right? And I'm going to be resilient. I'm not going to have a bad attitude. I'm not going to get pissy when I make mistakes. I'm going to be determined to succeed. And simply by being a grateful person, that will make you a better goalkeeper in the end. And so for me, my experience, I'm so grateful for that pressure that was on me. And maybe I could have dealt with it better, but I'm grateful for having learned that lesson now, because it made me a way better coach in person.
I think that's something we could go a long ways in. So I'm stopping myself from asking more questions. But lots of good points. Jill, we'll have to have you back on. Very, very good. Yeah, a lot of fun. Again,
we didn't even get to NWSL becoming goalkeepers.
No,
so now we have to have you back on.
Yeah, then we tricked you. We have to come
we
back.
have to 100%.
In my head, I was like, oh, we covered everything, but we didn't. We got halfway there. No, that's wonderful. Jill, where can people find you online?
On Instagram at the Keeper Institute, at TKI Coach Jill. You can email me at jloyden@thekeeperinstitute.com. You can send a smoke signal to Sewell, New Jersey, because that's where our Keeper Institute headquarters is. I might see it. Yeah, reach out anytime. I can help support the goalkeeping community. It's something I'm super passionate about.
Very good. Very good. Wonderful. Thank you for joining us, Jill. And Saskia, we can find you and myself on most major apps. TikTok, still haven't got on that.
No, it's not going to happen. Saskia _Webber on all platforms, and Saskia Webber on the Union. And just diligently learning from Jill every time she speaks. So watch her games, you guys, if you want to learn not just about goalkeeping, but about just soccer in general and all positions on the sport, because she's one of the best broadcasters there is.
You're kind. Thank you.
You know how I feel. I text you after every game. You can listen to my games too, you guys.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone. It's good
Thanks,
episode. We'll see you next time.